Hello everyone, this is an advanced chart tutorial. During this presentation we are going to be covering how to create column, bar, line, and combo charts, how to select, manipulate, and format data, including how to create custom formats, how to create secondary axes, how to customize ranges, how to add data labels, how to label different series and update the legends, how to add notes and observations, how to resize and crop charts and objects, how to sort data using pivot tables, how to use heat maps to display data, and how to use basic equations and functions in order to format and manipulate data. These are the different charts that we will be creating in this presentation. This first chart is a column chart, and this will kind of be our first one that we'll work on. It's a little bit simpler. There are some nuances to it. Then we will create a line chart, and some complexities to this line chart are that we are using a year format here, and the spacing has all been customized so that it coincides with the year. And then we are also using a secondary y-axis here. In this chart, we also have the custom time range down here at the bottom. Then we have a combo chart, meaning we're using a column chart and a line chart together. You'll also notice that there's quite a few labels in here and observations, and we'll show how to add those. This is a column chart, and it's complex for a couple of reasons. First, we have two axes. Also, we have to do a lot of sorting in order to obtain this data. And then lastly, we have to customize these ranges so that they share a common horizontal axis. So you can see here, we have 0 here and 0 here. And this is a little tricky, and so we'll go over how to do that. And then in this last chart, we will be creating a bar chart, and then creating a heat map as well using 3D maps. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So you will be given a template that looks just like this, and this is where you will put all of your charts. You will also be given a file where you will put your name down here at the bottom, and you'll post all your data here, and you'll create all of your charts here. So let's go back to our first chart. Here we are going to create this column chart. So let's go ahead and do that. In order to create our column chart, we need to first open up the file that contains all of the data. So the type of data that we're looking at is basic statistics for this market for the past 6 years. So we'll go into the trend report in order to find this data, and the trend report is right here. Okay, so this information is provided by Smith Travel Research, and first thing that we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the second tab here, the by measure tab, and we are going to copy cells B33 through B38, which are the dates. So B33 through B38, you can see these are the past 6 years. And then we also need to get the total year occupancy in this case. So that is P33 through P38. We'll just hold down the control key and select P33 through P38, and now we can just copy this data, and we're going to go toggle back on over to our template, and we're going to paste this starting in line 3. Okay, now we will go back on over to our other sheet, and now we are going to get the ADR data, which is right here for the past 6 years. So that's P70 through P75. paste that here. And then we need to get the RevPAR data, which is right here in P107 through 112. Okay, let's go ahead and label our columns. We'll go ahead and insert some cells here too, so we still have room for our labels up at the top. So we'll just insert and shift cells down. Okay, so this is the year. This is occupancy. This is ADR. And this is RevPAR. Okay, while we're here, we also want to label our chart. So it's called, so that we can just keep all of our data organized. And the chart is called Key Performance Indicators, or KPIs. And then the subtitle is just 2013 to 2018. Okay. So now we are going to select occupancy through RevPAR, and we are going to insert a column chart. So we come on up to Insert, and we go to just a 2D column chart. Okay, so you'll notice that when this displays, it doesn't look like the chart that we have been requested to make. So we need to change the column and row in order to get all of the occupancy data together and all the ADR and RevPAR data together. So we just click on some series point and we click on this switch row and column. Okay, now we have occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR all grouped together. Okay, next thing we need to do is to update our little legend here at the bottom. In order to do that, we need to click on Select Data. We need to name each of these series. So the first series we are going to name as 2013, and the second series as 2014, and so on. Okay, and you'll notice now that our legend has been updated. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is remove this chart title. We won't have chart titles on any of our charts because all of the title information is contained in the slide. So we'll go ahead and remove that. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is to change the minimum value here on the y-axis. To do that, we're just going to click on these values here, and we are going to change the minimum value to 40. So just zoom in a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Next thing we're going to do is add data labels. So to do that, we just click on each of these points and then we'll right click on it and we'll hit Add Data Label. Okay, you'll notice that these labels are a little bit messy, and that's because they're showing so many decimal points. So rather than trying to format the data label itself, we are going to go up into the original data and we are going to format it there. Okay, so first off, we're just going to highlight all of these data points. We're just going to come up to Home, and we're just going to get rid of all the decimal points. Okay. That simplified things greatly. Looks like we're missing a data label here. There we go. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is ensure that our zoom is set at 100%, which it is. Then we are going to resize this chart. So if we just click on the chart and then we come on up here to format, we can resize it right here. Okay, we want to make sure we're just selecting the outside of the chart. So every chart, just about every chart, will be formatted to 4.98 high and 12.42 wide. Okay, the reason that we are doing that is when we paste it into our PowerPoint presentation, it'll be precisely the size of the window, so no resizing will have to be done. Okay, by doing that, we'll ensure that all the formatting is consistent throughout our presentation and that nothing's stretched out or resized. We want to keep it all looking really nice. Now you'll notice that the font size is pretty small, so we need to just increase the font size, and we want to do it to everything. So we're just going to click on the edge of the entire chart here, and we're just going to hit this font up arrow until it gets to 18. Okay, and we now have a chart that looks identical to the one that we were trying to make. So now we will just copy the chart and we'll come on over to our PowerPoint presentation and we'll just click on the edge of this guy and just paste it right there. Okay, you might have to give permissions the first time. We'll go ahead and do that. Okay, and we're going to have to always reposition it. So you'll notice that when it's in the right spot, it'll create a red box all the way around it. And that's just showing that every edge is lining up with the template edge. Okay, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, so the chart is in precisely the right spot. Now what we need to do is right-click on it and send it to the back. Okay, now you can see that this existing textbook is in the foreground. So now we'll just click into that textbook or text box, which will then allow us to grab the edge, and we'll just delete it. Okay, now we need to label our chart, and we're just going to call this key performance indicators. And then we're going to put the year. Okay, and we need to highlight the year because this subtitle is supposed to be 18-point font and the title is supposed to be 32-point font. Okay, everything looks great. Let's continue on to the next one. So in this chart, we are going to be graphing the occupancy and ADR historical values since 1995. And so in order to do that, we need to put in the moving average. A lot of times when we're using data through Smith Travel Research, we're using a 12-month moving average. And the reason we do that is because it takes out the seasonality ebbs and flows of demand out of the picture and just kind of smooths everything out. So by using a 12-month figure, for instance, if we're looking at July, we'll be comparing this current July all the way back until August of the previous year. So when we advance forward then, we'll now be looking through the end of this August and through the beginning of last September. So anytime we advance forward like that, the only thing that's changing is we're gaining a month and that old month from the previous year is dropping off. And so by using the 12-month moving average, we're only showing how things are changing in kind of a long-term basis. Okay, so we will also be using the trend report in order to get our data here. So let's flip on back over to our trend report. This time we will be going over to the 12-month moving change. Okay, so we can see that's right here, tab 6. So we are going to gather data starting in January of 1995. So we'll start right here, and we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, hold down the Shift key, and we can select that column. So we're going to do B, we're going to do C, so we can even just kind of hold down the Shift key and hit here. And then we are also going to do E. So to get E, we'll hold down the Command or Control key, and we'll start at the bottom and go up to the top. Okay. So we've got January of 1995 all the way down through December of 2018. We'll copy that data, we'll flip back on over to here, and we'll go ahead and just put it to the side so it's out of the way. So let's go ahead and put it right here. Okay, let's label things. So date, and this looks like occupancy, and ADR. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to populate the date field using the end of the month for the first 2 months. Okay, so what I mean by that, we're going to put 1/31/1995 here. We're going to put 2/28/1995 here. Okay, and by doing that, Excel will realize that we're trying to select the last day of the month, and it will then continue that trend as we copy it down the sheet. So we'll go ahead and copy this down to the end, and you can see now we have the last day of each month. Okay, we can label that as date. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is change the format of our date so that it's only displaying the year. The date data will still be there, but it's just going to display the year on the axis and here in the data. So in order to do that, we need to use more number formats here, and we are going to create a custom number format. And all we need to do is just type in Y, 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 Y. So 4 Ys, and it'll thus know that we're only asking for it to display the year. Okay, so we can see now these are all displayed as 1995, 1996 here, but if we click on the cell, we can see that the actual date is still there. And that's what we want, because we want it to all be listed still sequentially when we graph our data. We just want the display to show 1995. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is calculate our occupancy. Right here we have 66.8, but that doesn't have percent after it or anything like that. So we could go in here and add a percentage sign after each one of these values, but that would take forever. So what we're going to do instead is convert this into a percentage. So if we just click here and take this value and divide it by 100, okay, it's now a decimal point, which we can then reformat as a percentage. Okay, and we can just copy this down the sheet. A little kind of trick is if we want to copy down to the last value of something on the left, we can just double click when it shows this X over the bottom right corner. Okay, so we're going to just double click there. There we go. We'll label this as occupancy. And then we'll do ADR. Okay, and ADR, we're just going to simply reference it. And then we'll double click as well. Okay, I want to format this, so it's already all selected, so I can just come up here and hit currency. Okay, and once again, I'm going to want to get rid of my zeros. So now everything is prepared for us to go ahead and insert our line charts. Okay, so we'll go ahead and select all of our data, and we'll come on up to the top of the page here, and then we'll click Insert and a line chart. Okay, so something you might notice is that our y-axis is kind of weird. It's showing all these percentages that are really high, and that our occupancy value is clear down here at the bottom. It looks kind of odd. So what we want to do, we want to have the occupancy display here on the left, and we want the ADR to display over here on the right. So in order to do that, we need to select this ADR series, and we need to add a second axis to it. Okay? So to do that, we come up here to Format, and we are going to select the series called ADR. Okay? And we're going to come over here to this icon, and we're going to say that we would like it plotted on a secondary axis. Okay, now this is starting to look a lot more like our chart. You can see here now we have ADR here on the right, and we have occupancy over here on the left, and we have all of our years over here. So everything's starting to look pretty good. So let's just continue to format this and get it to look exactly like our presentation slide. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is we need to double click on our secondary axis here, and we need to change the range for it. Okay, so right now it's set with a minimum at 0. Okay, we want to change that to 70, and we want to change our maximum to 170, which it just did automatically. Okay, so ADR looks good. Now we want to format our occupancy axis, so that's this axis here. And everything, remember, is being measured as a percentage, and so we need to put it in decimal point format. So we're going to change this to 50. Okay, and we'll leave that at 75. All right, so the range now looks the same as our other chart. Okay, one thing you might notice is that we have numbers in between the lines here, whereas this side doesn't. So let's go ahead and change our major units to 20. Okay, formatting looks good. Let's go ahead and click on our horizontal axes. You can see that the major units are 14 months. We don't want that. We want them to be 12 months. Okay, now it's showing every single year, which is great. Okay, next thing that we're going to do is we are going to ensure that our zoom is set to 100%, which it is, and then we are going to resize our chart. Before I do that though, I'm going to just expand W here, so that I can kind of just keep this chart within this area. Okay. So now I click on Format, and I'm going to change it to 4.98 and 12.42. Okay, we'll get rid of our chart title. We'll click on the edge, and then come on up here and increase the font size of everything up to 18. Okay, and now we are ready to go ahead and copy our chart on over. So we'll just copy it, and we'll flip back on over to our PowerPoint and click on the edge here and paste. And we'll reposition that and send it to the back. Click into the text box and then onto the edge, and then right click, and actually we can just cut, or we can hit delete. Okay, and then we need to add our chart label, which is occupancy and ADR, and then based on 12-month moving average. Okay, and we'll resize this to 18-point font and resize this to 32. Okay, that looks great. Next, we are going to create a combo chart that shows our occupancy, supply, and demand percent changes since 1995. Okay, there are some nuances to this. So the data that we are looking at in this report is reported quarterly instead of a moving average that's reported monthly. It's a moving average, a 12-month moving average that's reported quarterly. Okay, this was done to kind of simplify and make the columns within this chart look more appealing. Okay, and to kind of smooth out the lines a bit. That looks really great, but it introduces some nuances that make it more difficult to create this chart. Okay, so these nuances are, first, the data does not exist in the file that we have right now. We have to create the data using the raw data. In order to do so, we need to take the sum of the previous 12 months for supply and demand and use that to calculate occupancy. We also need to skip 2 lines because we only want to look at it quarterly, and then we need to calculate the variances. So we have several steps here that we're going to have to go through in order to manipulate the data to make it accurate for what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so this is a pretty complex process, complex chart. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to flip back on over to our trend report, and we're going to navigate on over here to sheet 13, which contains all of our raw data. Okay, I'm going to click on the whole chart, and I'm going to unmerge all of the cells. Okay, this will make it easier for me to select the data. Okay, what I'm going to do, we're going to do this a little differently this time. We're going to select columns B, I, and K. So B, I, and K. We're going to copy this and we're going to paste it over here. Okay, and now we just need to kind of wipe out these values up here. Let's go ahead and label our chart. It's really important to label all of your data always so that if you're coming back in here later, you can tell exactly where your chart is located. It just helps keep everything nice and organized. One thing you'll also notice is I've put everything here under my sheet. Presumably everybody would have a shared file and there would be numerous sheets out here that would contain all of the charts and data being used for this presentation. So these market studies that we're performing in this example can be quite lengthy and can contain anywhere from 50 to 100 slides. And so there would be a ton of charts and data within this workbook, all of which would be used in a presentation. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and label the chart, and we'll call it occupancy, supply, and demand percent change. Okay. Let's just copy the formatting here so it allows it to go over. And we'll do that for the next line as well. Okay, and then we're going to put the subtitle, which is based on 12-month moving average. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to start 1 year prior to the end of the first quarter that we want to measure. So we want to start measuring as of the first quarter of 1995, okay, which is right here, March of 1995. But because we want to report the change data, we have to have data from the previous year in order to calculate that change data. So we need to come up here to March of 1994. So the next thing we're going to do is create the date range. So let's go ahead and write our label in here, date. Okay, then here in March, we're going to put in the end of the month, which is 3/31/1994. Okay, and we don't want to have actually an equals sign. And then we're going to skip on down to June. So 6/30/1994. Okay, now we are going to add 2 spaces to the bottom there. And when we copy down the page, it'll now figure out that we want to also copy those spaces in. Go ahead and delete this here. So now you can see that we have our spacing every 3rd month, okay, which is exactly what we want. Now we will add our supply data. And next our demand, so we'll go ahead and put that label in. And remember, these are a 12-month moving average, so in this case we'll just use the sum for the previous 12 months. I know that's not an average, but when we're calculating the percent change later, sum will work great here. So we're going to end in March, so we will have had to have began in the previous April. Okay, so that's April 93 through March of 94. Okay, we'll go ahead and copy this over. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is copy these formulas down the page. So in order to do so, I'm going to just copy these values here. And you'll notice that I include 2 spaces underneath so that it will continue this spacing down the sheet. Okay, and I'm going to select the area I want to copy it down. And I included 2 spaces under here as well. Now I'm going to paste formulas. Okay, there we go. Now I have all of my values on down the page, and these are the sum of the previous 12 months supply and demand. Now I am ready to calculate the change in these figures. So in order to do so, let's just copy this date column and paste it over here. Okay, and in order to calculate the change, I need to put that formula in right here. So I've gone a whole year down. I'm now comparing March 31st, 1995 to March 31st, 1994. Okay, so for my equation, I'm going to take the difference. So this value minus this value, this is our benchmark formula. Okay, so it's always whatever your current metric is minus whatever the benchmark is. So in this case, the performance from the prior year. Okay, and then it's divided by whatever the benchmark is. So once again, the performance from the prior year. Okay, so this is kind of odd, but supply actually went down during this particular time period. Okay, and we'll copy that over and paste it in for demand as well. So let's go ahead and label these. All right, so once again, we'll copy these cells here, and we'll go on down the sheet and go 2 cells past and paste our formulas. Okay, we've now have the percent change measured on a quarterly basis. We want to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So in order to do that, we will just copy all of this and come on over here and paste it as values. Okay, let's go ahead and format our time period here. So if you recall, we want to use our year formatting. So we'll just put in Y. And then we want these to be percentages. Okay. And now we are going to highlight these values here. We don't really want these values because there is no data here to the right, so we'll just go ahead and delete those out. Okay, now we'll highlight all of this. And there's a couple ways we could do this. We could sort it by the date, or we can just come up here and use under data this remove duplicates. Okay. So it found 30 or 97 unique values, which is all the data that we have there. We'll just go ahead and delete these cells so that it goes up against it, and that is our data. So if we click on this cell, you can see we have March 31st, 1995, and then we have June 30th, and so on and so forth, along with the precise values for the changes in supply and demand. Okay, one thing we forgot though, we forgot to add the change in occupancy. So let's go ahead and put that in as well. Okay, we'll insert here occupancy. So occupancy is just demand divided by supply, and it's displayed as a percentage. So we'll highlight all of these and copy it down the sheet. And we'll format those as percentages as well. Okay, and let's go ahead and insert a column here. We can actually use the same formula. So we'll just copy it and paste it here. Now we're looking at the change in occupancy levels. Okay, and once again we'll copy this and paste formulas down the sheet. Okay, let's put our label here. Next thing I'm going to do is copy and paste values over here. I'm going to leave a column in between so it doesn't try to combine with the other values over here. Okay, so we've got our occupancy. We'll go ahead and select down through the bottom here and remove duplicates once again. Okay, and let's go ahead and remove this space, and we'll remove this column now. Okay, and let's format this as a percentage. There we go. Now we have date, supply, demand, and occupancy. Okay, we are now ready to insert our chart. All of our data looks good. It's down through the bottom here. So we will now go ahead and select all of our data, and we will do that by selecting the date data through the occupancy data and coming on up and inserting a 2D line chart. Okay, we'll reposition this on over here. Okay, so this still looks quite different from the chart that we've set out to create. We have the data points along, or the horizontal axes points along the middle here. We want those to be at the bottom. Also, the occupancy data is not being displayed as a bar chart. The colors are different. So we've still got quite a ways to go to format this chart. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to go in and set the size of the chart. So if I click on the edge of my chart and I come on up to format, I can set it to 4.98 by 12.42. Okay, and I forgot to widen this, so let's just do that. We'll have to resize it again. So the width now is too wide, so 12.42. Okay, we can delete our chart title. And let's go ahead and increase the size while we're here. So home, take the whole chart to 18 font. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to select the occupancy series and we are going to change that. So it might be confusing on which of these is the occupancy series. You can see if you hover over this, it says supply, this says demand, and this says occupancy, but it was hard to select that with this axis here. A little trick is you can always come up to format and just select the occupancy series here. Okay. Once we've selected the occupancy series, we can change this chart type. So if we come up here, we can see change chart type, and we're going to change it to a column chart. Okay, so it's kind of starting to look like our chart, but the formatting is all kind of funny. So we need to adjust this. So we're going to come up to format once again. We're going to grab our occupancy series. Okay, and we're going to come on over here and we're going to change the gap width to 0. Okay, so that helped a little bit. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to change the border to a solid line, and we are going to change the width to 4 point. So we've got our border here. We're going to change it to solid line, and the width we are going to put at 4 point. Okay. The color is this dark blue. We can go ahead and leave it there. The fill, let's make sure that the fill is changed and set to dark blue as well, which it looks like it is. Okay, so that's looking a lot better. Next thing we need to do is we need to change our supply line. So if we come on up here to series and we change it to supply, we are going to change the color of our supply line to a 3-point font that is deep red. So let's go with our deep red here, and then we're going to put in a 3-point font here. Okay, that looks nice. Now we need to select our demand. We could click on it here as well. So we've now selected the demand, and we're going to change this to a dark yellow, which is kind of off the screen, so I'm going to just move this in so you can see. So we're selecting this dark yellow, and we're upping it to 3-point as well. Okay, we need to move this chart, this horizontal axis, down to the bottom. You'll also notice that it's every 10 months. Okay, that's not great because it causes this kind of error here where we have 2011 listed twice. Okay, so we want to make sure that that's on 12 months. And we also want to change the position, and we want it to be low. Okay, we are now ready to paste this into our presentation. So we'll grab the edge of it, and we'll hit copy, and we'll come back on over to our PowerPoint. And we'll click on this edge here and reposition it so that everything lines up with our little red dotted lines. And we'll send it to the back. And we'll click in our text box, grab the edge, and delete that. Now we need to create our chart title, which is occupancy, supply, and demand, percent change. Okay, and we'll put based on 12-month moving average for our subtitle. Let's change that to 18-point font and this to 32. Okay, the only thing we're missing now are all of the labels that point out the different phenomenon that coincide with these data points. Okay, so in order to put those in, we're just going to come up here to Insert, and we're going to add a text box. Okay, and let's click on the edge of that and make sure the size is right. Yep, it's set to 18. That looks great. So here we're going to put 911. Let's go ahead and center this box, the text in the box as well. Okay, let's reposition that right down here. And then let's copy that and click up here and then just kind of paste a bunch of these. We'll just start repositioning them in different spots. It looks like we have one extra. Okay, so this one we will relabel as New Convention Center. Okay, we'll want to expand this a little bit so that convention all fits on one line. We'll put that right there. Okay, this we will change to high ADR. Reposition it a bit, and we'll put big supply here. Great Recession here. Recovery here. Government shutdowns here. And then Marriott Marquis here. Okay, the last thing we need to do is point out that there were actually 2 government shutdowns. So in order to do that, we will just use some arrows. So insert, shape, arrow. Okay, and we can do another. All right. And here we have our chart. Okay, next we are going to create our bar chart or column chart that shows the various submarkets and their RevPAR and RevPAR percent change. This appears to be a fairly simple chart, but it's actually quite complex because it needs a lot of manipulation of the data, and the axes are a little tricky to figure out. So to complete this chart, we are going to have to use a different report. We've used the trend report up to this point. Now we are going to be using this report that has the market segment data in it. So we'll go ahead and close down our trend report and expand our segmentation report here. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is select columns C, D, K, and E. So we want the segments, the date, the RevPAR for the last 12 months, and then we want the change in that RevPAR value, which is M. So we'll copy all these values, and now we will go on over to our template that we've been working with, and we will paste them to the side here. Okay, let's scroll up to the top, and let's insert a few cells here. Okay, and we can label our chart, so it'll be submarkets, RevPAR, and RevPAR percent change. Okay, and the subtitle will just be 2018. Okay, the next thing that we are going to do is select all the data and insert a pivot chart. So we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom here. It's pretty large data set, and that's why we're using the pivot table to sort it for us. Okay, so we'll come back up to the top, and we'll go to Insert and Pivot Table, and we're going to want it to be in this existing sheet, so we'll hit Existing Sheet here, and we'll just select right here next to our existing data. Okay, and we click OK now. So the first thing that we're going to do is to add our fields here to the various spots where we want them to be. So we want to be able to filter based on the dates. We'll drag date down into filters, and then we want the data reported by each segment, so we want segments to be in the rows. So we'll drag segments down into the rows. Okay, and then we want both of these values to be reported. So we'll come down here to values there and values here as well. Okay, so right now you can see here that it's taking the sum of all these values. So because we've included such a large amount of time, it's adding all those values together. So these are all RevPAR figures for a large period of time that's all being added together. So what we want to do is we want to filter them based on the date. So we'll come on up here to date, maybe. There we go. We'll unselect all, and then we'll go all the way down the bottom because we only want the end of the previous year. Okay, remember this is a rolling 12-month figure. Okay, so if we select the end of last year, it will include the previous 12 months. Okay. Now we can see here that we have the RevPAR figures for the last 12 months for each of these metrics over here. Okay, we also have the percent change figures over here. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to copy just the rows of the pivot table that we want. Okay, so we want Alexandria, and we'll hold down the Command or Control key. We want Arlington, and we want Bethesda. Let's see. Let's try that again. So all the way down here through Dulles Airport. Okay, we want Fairfax, so we're holding down the Control key, and we want Frederick and Rockville. Okay, we want this Fredericksburg. And then we want Maryland and the suburban Virginia area and the CBD. So there should be 10 fields. So we've got 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks good. So let's copy those and paste them over here. And let's go ahead and expand these. So these are all values that have been pasted, and that's great. Okay, so what we are going to need to do when we create this chart is we're going to have to create a chart that has a common x-axis that runs down the middle and then has all of the RevPAR data above that axis, and then the change in RevPAR kind of bouncing up and down below that axis. Okay, as a rule of thumb, it's generally good to have about 3/5 of the data or the plottable area above the x-axis and about 2/5 below the x-axis. Okay, so the values that are above the x-axis are the RevPAR figures for sure. Okay, and so we want there to be kind of 3/5 of the plot area above and 2/5 below. So what does that exactly mean? Well, if we look here, we can see our highest value is 171. So let's say we round it up to 180. Okay, if we want 180 above the x-axis, then that means we need 120 below the x-axis. So our upper bound and lower bound we can label here. So our upper bound will be 180 and our lower will be -120. Okay, so we have 3/5 above and 2/5 below. Okay, if we look at this here, we're looking for our largest value. In this case, it happens to be a negative value. Okay, and so we want, once again, 2/5 below the x-axis and 3/5 above. So if we take this -649 and round it up to -8, okay, we have 2/5 below. Well, in order to have 3/5 above, we need to have 12 up above. Okay. One little nuance though is if you look at these values, they're being measured as numbers where we really want them measured as percentages. So we are going to need to convert that. So let's go ahead and just divide this value by 100. Okay, we'll just copy this on down. And now we are just going to copy this and paste the values. We'll just go ahead and paste it right over our existing data. Okay, and we can now just get rid of this. Now we can display this all as a percent and these all as dollar values, so currency, and let's get rid of those zeros. Okay, so we have the submarket here. We have its RevPAR here and the RevPAR percent change here. Okay, that looks good. So we want to match the existing, the format of the existing chart, so we're going to have to reorder things a little bit. Okay, in the existing charts, the central business district is reported first, so let's go ahead and kind of just reorder these. Okay, next is Arlington. And then next is Fairfax and Tysons Corner. And then the Dulles Airport. Okay, and then we have Alexandria and Bethesda and Frederick and Rockville, and then I-95 and Fredericksburg, and then Maryland and suburban Virginia area. Okay, now we can just select all this and move it back up here. So we've reordered. Also, these labels are a bit long for our chart, so we want to simplify them a little bit. So this first one we're just going to call CBD. Okay, we'll leave Arlington, Virginia, that's just fine. Fairfax and Tysons Corner, let's just call it Fairfax and Tysons. Okay, looks like our S came off of there. Okay, next, Dulles Airport, let's just call it Dulles Airport. Alexandria, Virginia is fine. Bethesda College, we'll get rid of the park in Maryland. Over here, we'll get rid of the state as well as here. And then Maryland, let's get rid of South and East. And then let's get rid of area here. Okay, we've abbreviated it just like it's done on the chart in the example. Okay, we are almost ready to insert our column chart. There is a little nuance to Excel here, just with the way we're trying to do things with two axes, where it has a hard time with overlapping data. So in order for this to display correctly, we have to insert what's called a pad. Okay, so I'm going to just insert two columns here, and I'm going to call this RevPAR pad, and I'm going to call this percent change pad. Okay, now I am ready to insert my chart. I will go ahead and select all of this data, and I'm going to come on up to Insert and a 2D chart. Okay, so you can see that this chart doesn't really look very good. We've got everything on the same scale, and it's making it really difficult to see these change in RevPAR figures. So what we want to do is have the RevPAR over here on the left, and we want the percent change in RevPAR over here on the right. Okay, so to do that, we need to select this percent change pad and this percent change figure and plot them on a secondary axis. Okay, so we'll come up to Format, and we'll click down to percent change pad and change it to the secondary axis. Okay, and it's trying to format it, but doesn't really know how to do it because there's no data there. So that it'll fix itself once we add this second series. So we come to RevPAR percent change, and we plot it on the secondary axis as well. Okay, so you can see that this is kind of crazy. There's a lot going on here. It's not really displayed in any way that makes any sense. Okay, we could start by changing this to a percentage. Okay, but zeros here on this side, on this axis, and zeros over here on this axis, which is making this really look pretty odd. Okay, so we need to fix the axes and make them line up nicely. Okay, and that's why we did this whole upper and lower bound activity. Okay, so for the secondary axes, we want our upper bound to be 12. Okay, so let's do maximum. So 12% or 0.12, and we want our lower bound to be 0.08, so that looks good. Okay, let's also change it though so it's only reporting every fourth. Okay, and we'll do that because we want the lines to line up nicely. Okay, now we need to do our primary axis, so we'll double click on that, and our minimum we want to be -120, and then our maximum we want to be 180. Okay, so you'll notice that these aren't lining up still. See how we have like -20 over here and +30 here, and these lines aren't lining up. That's because the last thing that we have to do is just change the units to 60. Okay, now everything is sharing the same line. Our zeros are lined up in the middle. This chart looks a lot better. Okay, these labels though are overlapping with our data, and we don't want that, so we need to move them down to the bottom. Okay, so under labels we're going to put low. Okay, and now we have them down here at the bottom of the chart. Let's delete our chart title. Okay, and also you can see here that the pads are in here, but you can't see them. Okay, we needed those to get the spacing correct up here, but we don't need them to be labeled. So let's just come in here and select the pads, and we're just going to delete them. Okay. The other thing is we have a lot of space up here at the top, and this is taking up quite a bit of space down here. So let's just reposition this guy and put it up at the top. There we go. Okay, let's resize our chart. So we'll click on the edge of it, come up to Format, 12, let's see, 4.98, and then 12.42. Okay, let's increase our font sizes. Okay, so everything's up to 18. Our chart looks a little bit squished, so let's take down the label size. So this section right here, let's take it down just a little bit. Just give ourselves a little bit more room. Okay, let's say we wanted to change these values to red. That's pretty easy to do. Just come on over here, and the fill, we can just change, let's see, we need fill. We can change it to our dark red. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and add some y-axis labels here. So we come on up to chart design, we can add chart elements. So we have these axes titles, and let's do our primary vertical first. So this is RevPAR. Okay, and then let's add our secondary vertical. RevPAR percent change. Okay, everything looks pretty good. The last thing we're going to do is just add some data labels. So if we click onto here and then right click, we can add data label and then add them here as well. All right, so our chart now matches our other chart, and we are now ready to go ahead and paste this into our PowerPoint presentation. So we can just copy it and come on back on over to our PowerPoint and paste it right here. Scoot it on down and move it to the back, and then delete our other text box. Let's go ahead and label it. So it's submarkets, RevPAR, and RevPAR percent change. And then our subtitle is just 2018. Okay, let's change our subtitle down to 18-point font and our title down to 32. Okay, this looks great. Okay, we're ready to do our last chart. And this chart is a little tricky. Part of it will be done using a bar chart, and part of it will be done using 3D Maps chart, which is only currently available on a Windows computer. So I'm running a Mac, and we'll have to kind of switch on over to a PC to record the final part of this presentation. So if you see the format of PowerPoint and Excel change a bit, that's because we're switching on over to the PC version. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is create our chart, and in order to do that, we need to go into the census data. So we will go ahead and close out of our segmentation data, and let's go find our census data. And this census data is a little bit different than just typical census data. We requested that the census data include latitude and longitude coordinates. So these have been provided, and we will use those in order to create our 3D map. Okay, first thing we need to do is go in and select the data that we need. So we need to select rooms, which is column I, and we need to select the submarket and the class. Okay, so let's copy all this and let's go back on over to our template here, and we'll just paste it right here. Let's insert a couple of rows by inserting cells and shifting them down just to put our label in. Okay, so this is just going to be labeled, this chart will just be labeled CBD. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to use the SUMIF function to count up how many rooms we have under each class within the CBD market, submarket. Okay, so first we need to identify all of the unique classes. So kind of an easy way to do that is just to copy class and paste it here, and then come on up to data and remove duplicates. Okay, we want to reorder these based on the type of class, like put them into order, right? So we start with luxury, and then we have upper upscale next, and then we have upscale. So we'll just kind of reorder these, and then upper mid-scale, then mid-scale, and economy. And let's go ahead and shift those up and shift this guy down. Okay, so now we are going to use the SUMIFS function. So S at the end allows you to select multiple criteria. So we'll just put in equals sum if and then S. Okay, so first thing it's asking for is the sum range, what we want it to actually add up, and that's the number of rooms. So we can just include all this column. There's some values in here that are not numbers, but that's fine. They won't be counted. So we can just select that whole column. Okay, next is the criteria range, and then followed by the criteria. Okay, so the criteria range is where it's looking for the criteria. So let's do class first. We could do submarket as well, but let's do class. Okay, and our criteria then is we want it to count the rooms that are under the luxury class. Okay, if we were doing SUMIF, we'd be done. The order would be a little bit different, but we'd be done. But because we're doing SUMIFS, we have multiple criteria. Okay, so our second criteria range is the submarket. Okay, and we want it to just include the Washington, D.C. CBD. Okay, so we want to make sure we spell this correctly. So let's scroll down and find Washington, D.C. CBD. There it is. Okay, so there's no commas or anything, so we could just write in here, or we could click down below and use some absolute cell referencing. But let's do Washington, D.C. CBD. Okay, and this has to be in quotation marks. Okay, and we close it, so that's our second criteria. We've got all of our criteria set, our criteria ranges set. Now we just hit enter. Okay, so there are 5,988 rooms in the Central Business District that are in the luxury class. Okay, and we can just now copy this and paste it down here. And we can see each of these now. Okay, when I display this on my chart, it's displayed in thousands. So I need to set up kind of a custom number format. I never want to like manually manipulate the data, so I always want to just change the formatting. So to do that, we can just come on up to home and change our number format here. Okay, we're going to use a custom format. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a $sign. Okay, and then we could do a couple things here. If we want a decimal point to be displayed, like if there are less than 1,000 rooms and we want it to show it as a decimal point, then we could put 0.0 and that'll force it to show a decimal point. Okay, but if we don't, which we don't in this case, we just put in the 0 and then put in a comma. Okay, the comma is just like a comma in a string of numbers. It signifies 3 decimal places. So you can see before we had the comma, we had 5,988 as the example, but once we put in that comma, it's now going to round it to the nearest thousand. If I put in 2 commas, it would round it to the nearest million. But I just want 1 comma. So now I'm just going to put in a K, which signifies thousands. Okay, these have all now been rounded to the nearest thousand. Okay, I'm not actually displaying these values anywhere, but by changing this formatting, it will automatically set up the formatting on my chart when I insert it. Okay, we are now ready to insert our bar chart, so we'll go ahead and select all of our data. We'll come on up here to Chart and 2D Bar Chart. Okay, let's get rid of our title. And let's increase the font size to 18. Okay, and now we need to resize this. So because we're putting 2 charts on the page, we need to give ourselves a smaller area. So we'll still make them 4.98 tall, but the width we want to just be 6. Okay. In the example we were provided, luxury class was up at the top, so this is in reverse order. So we need to change this a little bit, and we just need to change it to reverse order. So if we click here on this icon, and we can click on axes options and categories in reverse order. Okay, that now looks like my chart with one exception. Well, with a couple exceptions. We have our data up here at the top. We really want it to be down here at the bottom, our axes labels. Okay, and so let's just go ahead and click on these and change the labels down to low. And it's staying high, so let's try high. That's kind of odd, but it went ahead and flipped it low. Okay, maybe that's because it's in reverse order. There's something kind of weird there. All right, the last thing we're going to do is change and add a border around this thing. Okay, so if I come here, I come to solid line, border, and then I can add a 2.25 border around it, but I want it to be black. Okay. There we go. That looks like our other chart. So we will go ahead and copy it, and we will paste it into our template here. And we will line it up with the edges of this. Okay, and we'll go ahead and just put in CBD. Okay, to create the heat map, I need to switch over to a PC. So I'll finish this recording in a bit. Okay, we're on a PC now, and the next thing we're going to do is create the heat map to accompany our bar chart here. So let's go into the census data. Here is the census file. We need to select columns I. So let's see, I, rooms, P, which is the submarket, so I'll hold down the control key. And then BR and BS, which are the latitude and longitude points. Oh, here they are, CA and CB it looks like. Select these two. Okay, and we'll copy these. And then we'll toggle back on over to the template here where we can paste these. We'll go ahead and put them right here. Okay, let's go ahead and give ourselves a little space. And we'll just put CBD heat map. Okay, the next thing we are going to do is convert all of these data points into a table. The 3D maps will not work unless it's in a table format. So we're just going to highlight all the points, hold down the Shift key, and then I'll click here. And we are going to go to Insert and Table. Okay. And now we will go to Insert, and we're going to come on over here to this 3D Maps. Okay, the first time you open this, it might ask you to enable 3D Maps. You'll want to go ahead and click Enable. It'll just take a moment to open. Okay, so we can see here a map of the United States, and you'll see that there are several points of data down here. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is limit the data that we are viewing to the CBD. So in order to do that, we need to add a filter. So we can come down here to Filters and Add Filter. And we want to filter by submarket. And now we can scroll down here, and we want to select the Washington, D.C. CBD. So as you can see, the graphed region just got a lot smaller. So let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at what we're looking at. As we zoom in, you can see it's kind of flattening or going closer to the Earth. We want to look at it from straight up above. So if we click on this flat map and then click this arrow all the way up, we can now see it a bit clearer. Okay. The other thing we can do is add map labels. That way we can see exactly what we're looking at. Okay, let's go ahead and continue to zoom on in. We'll reposition the image as necessary. Okay, we're starting to get a good picture of the CBD. This is showing points where each hotel exists. We want to change that a bit, and we want to look at a heat map. So if we come up here and switch it on over to a visualization of a heat map, that'll get us more of what we want. Okay, let's keep on zooming in a little bit. All right, and under our layer options, we can customize these a bit. So let's change the color scale to 150% and the radius of influence to 50%. Okay, that made these dots really small. When I was doing this on another computer, they were much larger, so we'll actually want to increase the radius of influence, so let's do 150%. Okay, that looks better. We could mess around with different amounts here. Let's say 200. Okay, maybe that's how we like it. And we'll reposition this how we want it. And once we feel comfortable with the image, we will go ahead and hit capture screen. So this looks pretty good. Hopefully these controls won't be in there. Let's go ahead and hit capture screen. Now we will minimize that. We're going to come into our PowerPoint and we'll just hit paste now. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is to resize our map. So if we come up here to format, we have this cool crop setting here. Okay, so we'll want to enable crop first, so click on crop. And then if you change the size settings, it'll allow you to more precisely set the crop area. So you can only do one at a time though. So let's do height of 4.98. Okay, and if I try to put in the width, it actually won't work. So the width I'll have to manually set, and I want it to be 6 inches. Right now it's at 6.88. So I am just going to go ahead and reposition this until I get something close to 6. Okay, there we go. If I wanted to zoom in a little bit, I can grab the underlying image here and stretch it a little bit. And now I can reposition this within that box. And that looks pretty good right there. Maybe we'll try to grab that hotel over there on the outskirts. Okay, things are looking pretty good. Now I just come over here and click my crop button again. Okay, and I'd like to put a border around this. It looks like part of my map was cut off, so I'll want to make sure that it is at least high enough to go up to the edge of the crop region. Okay, that looks better. So now let's go in and let's put a border around this. So if we do picture border, we can change the weight to 2.14 to match our other one. And now we just go ahead and position this on the right side of this area. There we have it. We've got our bar chart showing the quantity of rooms by class, and then we've got our heat map showing the location and density of hotels geographically. This is a very nice representation of the Central Business District. Okay, that's it for this presentation. Email me if you have any questions. Have a great day.